let's actually take a look at how you can incorporate third-party cloud applications into Azure Active Directory.
I'm going to take you on a really brief tour of what you can do with applications, because a lot of this is really more operational stuff. Certainly there's a dev side of it if you're going to integrate this into your applications. But as far as managing applications within Azure, it's definitely more of, as I said, more of an operations thing. But it's still really good to understand what's available, because you can certainly plug your applications into this. All right, so I've got an Azure Active Directory, and I'm going to take a look at the applications that are available. Now, I've actually used Azure Active Directory applications for an earlier demo for a couple when I was working with the SDK. All right, and I wanted to authenticate as the application as opposed to authenticating as myself. Now we're going to take a look at kind of how you go about adding applications. We're going to look at adding two different types of applications. One is going to be a gallery application. That's going to be a third-party application that's already been built and registered with Microsoft as being able to integrate with Microsoft, and then we'll integrate with Azure AD. Then we'll also look at a custom, how we could add a custom application and what you see with that. Okay, so let's do that first. So we're going to add, and you can see two different options here. I can add an application my organization is developing, or an application from the gallery. Let's add an application from the gallery. Now, as you can see, there are a number of applications in the gallery. I've actually already added a couple to a different Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, and we're going to work with those, but I just wanted to show you the process. Let's say, pick one of my favorites here, Concur, and I go in and set the display name. Should tell them that I'm advertising for them. Oh, and it couldn't add it, although it did. If I go into Concur, it's probably yelling at me because I've already added it to the other one. There we go. It did let me add it. It just yelled at me about it. And so it's added this. Again, this was coming out of a gallery, and there are thousands of these apps now in the gallery, and I just picked one very quickly. Obviously, you can search and do all sorts of other stuff. But this is the basic configuration. So I can configure single sign-on with this. If I click that, it's going to say what type of single sign-on I would want, possibly password single sign-on. If I select Microsoft Azure AD single sign-on, so it's going to federate between Azure Active Directory and Concur and allow me to do things like manage users. I can do that. Existing single sign-on, if I'm using a third party, I can use that as well, but we're not going to actually do any of that. Okay. Now, if I've got single sign-on, I can actually configure account provisioning as well, which means that I would set up account provisioning so that as users are added into Azure Active Directory, or I can manage this from Azure Active Directory, those users are automatically created in the third-party cloud application. Now, the third-party cloud application has to be built to integrate with that, and there's a configuration process as you might expect, but it does give you that ability to actually flow your users all the way through your Active Directory and into other external cloud-based applications. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop back and take a look at the applications that I've got in a default directory, and you'll notice that I've got Microsoft account. Oh, I know why I couldn't add it, because I'd already added it to that one and I forgot to delete it. Anyways, I've got a Microsoft account application that I've added to my default Azure Active Directory. And what I'm going to do, and I mentioned this, is I'm going to add another application. Now, what's interesting is because this is my default, I actually have a third one, which is publish an application that will be accessible from outside your network. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to add an application that my company, my enterprise, is developing, and we're going to call this demo app because I'm not particularly creative. And notice two different options: web application and or web API, or a native client application. So we'll do this as a demo app web application. I would need to specify a sign-on URL and an app ID URL. These are ones that can be changed later on, so we'll just go demo.contoso.com, and by the way, it should probably be HTTPS, but that's okay. Let's make this a little bit better. There we go. It doesn't really matter right now. Obviously, you don't want to point into somebody else's location, but that's really the basic setup for that. And then once that gets created, you get this configuration. And if I go to configure for demo app, you can set the name, the sign-on. Notice it's got a logo, which is pretty cool. You can define, is it multi-tenant? The client ID, that's something that would be necessary for certain integration. User assignment required to access the application. In other words, does the user have to be assigned to access it? And then you have some other things. There's the single sign-on information, permission to other apps, so I can add other applications to this. Notice it's already got Windows Azure Active Directory. Now, if I was going to integrate this, and I would need to have a key as well, and so I could create a key. And when you create a key and save this, it's going to generate the key, and it's going to show it one time. And when you generate it, you need to grab it after you generate it, because otherwise, there we go. You won't be able to retrieve it after you leave this page. Okay, easy enough. And that kind of makes sense. And there's other things you can do. If you want a custom logo, you can upload that custom logo. Okay, so this is the way that you add apps into Azure Active Directory. That's nice. What do you do with that, right? Well, I've got a page. I've already logged in to the Azure Active Directory Access Panel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh this, because I should have added this user in. Now, this, by the way, is a common location. Oh, nope, I didn't add them in. It's a common location, which is myapps.microsoft.com. User logs into there, and this is a completely customizable interface. Actually, assign that user access. I'm going to pause this. I'm going to log out, log back in, and that should refresh it. Okay, so that was probably pretty jarring because it popped right up there. But that was, I really just went through the process of logging out of the browser window and opening it back up. Okay, and now I've got this Microsoft account here in my list of applications. And again, I simply went to myapps.microsoft.com. I went through the login, and it picked up the fact that this account has been associated with the Microsoft account application. And I actually just remembered that I can't run this from Edge yet. So I'm going to go over here, and let's open this up with Internet Explorer. Now that actually opened up on my other screen, so we'll pull this up. All right. And it says I can't access this until I install some software. I'm going to install the Access Panel extension, which is installing off screen. I'm going to pause while that installs. And up it comes back in without the thing telling you that it needed to install. So that actually took a few things. Now, finally, when I click the Microsoft account, should open up. Now, the first time through, it's going to ask me for my credentials. And let me sign in, hopefully. Now, that probably seems like an awful lot of work, right, for one application. But I mean, once you get that initial setup configured, and I haven't even ever gone in here. Once you get that initial setup configured, then you're going to have however many applications you want, and you're going to have an environment where users can just come in and they can, click the tile, and this is very configurable, and you're just giving them that single point of authentication and also really kind of application management. So I know for a single application and kind of the way that I went through that is a bit of it may seem like a bit of work, but you have to look at that broader picture. Not only can you integrate your own applications into this, but you can also integrate third-party applications in to give your users that really cohesive single sign-on experience.
As you can see, that's a pretty big list of applications that can be integrated into Azure Active Directory, and obviously you can build your application from the ground up to integrate it into this environment as well to provide you with your authentication.